Thank you very much, Eunice. Good morning, colleagues. I have a very pregnant topic which covers very broad areas, and I'm not too sure whether I'll be able to do justice in all these areas that I'm going to talk about today, but I hope I will touch important points that we can share in the presentation in 20 minutes. In my presentation, I'm going to look at open access, what open access is, and also I'm going to touch a little bit on the publisher copyright policies. I'm also going to cover a little bit of information around open data, but most importantly, I want to share where we are as CPUT in terms of embracing open access. Firstly, in defining open access, what it is. Open access is free online copies of peer-reviewed literature, meaning that it's accessible free on the internet. In most cases, there are no licensing restrictions on their use by readers, meaning that it's the opposite of the normal models that have been used to access content through subscriptions, and they can therefore be used freely for research, teaching, and other purposes. If we talk open access, we talk open access to scientific publications, and also we speak open access to data that underpins those publications. And the issue of data becomes a gap in terms of the way science is communicated. Open access is not a self-publishing, nor a way to bypass peer review and publication, nor a kind of second-class card price publishing route. The way the benefits of open access is that it increases visibility of scholarly publications, because a lot of people can be able to see it on the web around the globe. And it allows early sharing and debating of results with colleagues, because if you put your content through open access, it becomes immediately available. You don't have to wait where you have to request the publishers to put your article on journals, so there is immediate access. And it encourages collaborative research. We know that when it comes to research, there are global collaborative projects that are going on. So if you publish through open access, it allows a potential for those collaborative research projects. And it has a potential of attracting foreign and donor investments in South African research. And also, most importantly, it increases impact, where you find that there will be a lot of people who can be able to do a lot of citations when it comes to the publications that you have published. Now, open access is delivered in two models. It's either you do it through the gold open access, or you do it through the green open access model. When it comes to gold open access, it's where the researcher publishes on an open access journal. In terms of following this route, you find that the traditional publishers, they have an open access option if the researcher wants to publish through that option. And also, it can be provided through the open access publishers route. For instance, in South Africa, we have Cielo South Africa, who deals with open access publishing in South Africa. And then when I looked at this, I decided to go to our RIM systems, which is our Research Information Management System. I decided to look at the CPUT 2012 research outputs in accredited journal. And I discovered that we have about 211 of them. Out of the 211, I selected 120 of those articles, and I selected them randomly. I just wanted to see where CPUT researchers are publishing. And out of that 120, 84 of those articles are published in open access journals, meaning that CPUT researchers are already embracing open access publishing. And then in terms of the green open access, it's also called the self-archiving. Self-archiving is a practice where the researcher deposits the content in an institutional repository. And at CPUT, as I've said, the repository is called the digital knowledge. The reason for this, we do it so that we can ensure long-term preservation of our content and also comply to the issue of accessibility to the output of the university. The important thing that researchers must know is that when you deposit your content on the institutional repository, you must make sure that you check the publisher copyright policies and also the self-archiving lists that you should check so that you ensure that you comply to the mandates of publishers regarding making content accessible. You can do that through this website. There's a website from Sherpa Romeo, which is a publisher copyright policies and self-archiving website. In this website, you can type in the title of the journal that you are going to publish your content in, and there are policies on there where there are ticks. You find that there are policies that gives you an instruction when you can put your content in the institutional repository. You can also do this by getting into the journal website. You just type in the journal website. They do have policies when it comes to making content available on open access. I thought I should just look at the highlights in terms of the open access initiatives that have been going on in South Africa. There are lots of them. They happen at a national level and also at institutional level, but I've just picked up a few, about 5 of them to share here. South Africa has a national platform for open access through free online journals, and this platform is called the Scientific Electronic Library Online, which is hosted by CLOSA. And then the Department of Science and Technology had a workshop on national access to research data where they were looking at a South African perspective. This was done in 2007, and this seems to be the evidence of how important to make the data open. And another thing is the advent of the Intellectual Property Rights Act for publicly funded research, which was implemented in 2008. This act also will have a much influence in our university's policy on intellectual property rights. And also the engagement of South Africa in CoData and hosting of the 22nd CoData conference in Stellenbosch. This is also one of the evidences about open access. Now, this leaves us with the question that if these initiatives are happening at a national level, and you find that even other institutions are embracing open access, do we have to sit back as CPUT and not do anything about it? That I'll leave it with the crowd that's here. When it comes to open access, remember I said open access is about scientific publications and making them free, but we spoke about the gap of making data open. So we have to look at research data management and the issue of making data open. So the intention of this is to make sure that it's to make data that underpins a publication concurrently available on an institutional repository. The reason why we do it, I have a cartoon there where a researcher is asked about the data and the researcher is saying, but I have published the paper, so I don't have the data. So reasons for taking care of data includes things like that, which is long-term preservation of it. And then why open access to data? We want to allow people to scrutinize the research that we have done. Those who would like to replicate the experiments, they can have a fair chance to do that. And also the identification of errors, because we know in research sometimes there might be falsification of data and so on. People can be able to identify errors if there are any. The reuse of data for further discoveries, just to grow science and make sure that we develop more knowledge around the data that was developed. And most importantly, as an institution, to ensure long-term preservation of our data, because it is an asset of the university. And then I read a document which was quite interesting, which pinpointed 4 fundamental requirements for open data. This document is called Science as an Open Enterprise, and it's written by the Royal Society. They are saying the data must be accessible, meaning that it must be easy for people to access it, and we will require infrastructure for people to be able to access that data. And it must be intelligible, meaning that it must be understandable to every person who wants to scrutinize it. And it must be accessible so that people can verify the claims that we have made on our research findings. And also it must be usable, meaning that people who want to use it for any other reason, they can be able to do that. Then how can we as CPUT make sure that we make these requirements achievable? One of the things that we have to do is to take research data management as a strategic component, and we can do that by aligning research data management, even open access as well, to institutional goals. For instance, aligning to the RTI blueprint, the DRUSA initiatives that are going on within the institution. We also have to develop policies, processes, and robust infrastructure that will foster the management of research data through its life cycle. If we can manage to do all these three things, it will help us to ensure compliance of legal frameworks influencing the practice of managing research data. And just to share where we are at CPUT in terms of embracing open access and all these initiatives, currently we are working on developing a policy on open access and also on research data management. A working group has been developed, and it's chaired by Professor Sean Parther. And this exercise is under the auspices of the CPUT Libraries Director, Dr. Chiwari. The participants are the ones that you have there, and we have tried to cover all people who can represent different departments within CPUT. And in terms of infrastructure development, we are participating on the e-research infrastructure and communication initiative. It's called ERIC. This initiative is led by the Technic University of Munkam, which is in Germany, in Munich. The reason for this initiative, it is meant to develop a science infrastructure aimed at comprehensively supporting the whole life cycle of research at a university. So this infrastructure will cover all the components of managing research data, and it will also cover the component of sharing of scholarly communication, which involves open access communication. In terms of infrastructure, these are the partners that are involved in this initiative. Most of them are based in Germany. We are the only African university involved in this project, and CPUT is not contributing any money towards this. This project is funded by the German government. So we as CPUT are going to gain a lot of experience and exposure in terms of dealing with the issues of research data management and development of an infrastructure. In terms of processes, we know that we have, if we go this route, we have to make sure that we have proper processes that will support what we are doing. Before doing that, we are going to do a survey, and the focus of the survey will be on data management practices across faculties. At the current stage, we don't know as a university what types of data assets do we have within the university. We don't even know where that data is held, and we don't know how it is kept and what infrastructure is used to keep it. So the survey findings will inform the development of the systems requirement specification. That specification will cover all the needs that CPUT researchers have when it comes to research data management. That specification document will be submitted to the TUM team that works with CPUT in developing an infrastructure, and it will make sure that the needs for CPUT researchers are catered for in the systems development phase. In terms of processes as well, the library is working with the Research Directorate on InfoEd. The InfoEd is a company that runs the RIM system, and we're working with the project manager there. Our intention is to ensure that there is interoperability between RIM system and the digital knowledge, which is our institutional repository. And one of the things that we will be focusing on in this exercise, we want to streamline the submission process so that we cut the duplication of submission, where you find the researcher has to submit at the research office and also submit in the repository, submitting the same content. So this, if we can be able to do this, we will, as the library, be able to preserve the full text content of our publications, which are held in our RIM system, and make sure that we are ensuring free access to that content. Open Access Declaration. Most universities have been signing the Open Access Declaration, especially the Berlin Declaration for Open Access in the Sciences and Humanities. This year alone, Rhodes, UWC, TUT have signed the Berlin Declaration for open access. And as CPUT, we are planning to sign this declaration next year during the Open Access Week. And the intention is to commit the university in supporting the open access principles and striving towards achieving openness in publicly funded research. Basically, that's what we have been doing in a nutshell. I hope I've covered 20 minutes.